Well, if you've opened up your Twitter timeline, you know what season it is. It is spring transfer portal window season, and there are a tidal wave of new additions. Garrett and I will break it all down and more right here on the Three Technique.
One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Yes. Hello and welcome, everybody. Another edition of the Three Technique, a college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. Garrett, the spring portal has opened. The spring pollen has opened as well. I'm dying of allergies right now, just trying to hold it down and get through the next sentence without blowing my nose. How about you?
We are twins in that regard, my friend. It has been just a rough spring here in the North Texas area, and man, allergies are killing everybody right now. But to awful segue this thing, not as much as the transfer portal is killing certain rosters right now, because oh boy, it is just that time of the year where we have I like it because you have the first transfer window, right? And a bunch of guys will transfer in and you'll get really excited. And then like half of those guys leave. And it's like, he's choosing to enter the portal 3 months after he entered the portal last time. And it's, well, never mind. We can't count on that guy. I guess it'll be the other guy. And so I don't know. It's just kind of funny to watch this whole thing happen. And there is a level of absurdity to it where it's just so many people in the portal and so much free movement that obviously we're going to have to fix this at some point in time. Obviously, this can't continue to go on. But at the moment, it's just kind of, you got to kind of laugh at it because it's kind of funny at the moment.
Yeah, the seemingly unlimited number of portals certainly seems to be an issue. It feels like you should get one, maybe two tops, and be cut off there. The calendar obviously is going to be reworked. It sounds like maybe even the recruiting calendar is going to be reworked with signing day moving as well. But all of that is a future problem for a future time. Right now, though, we've got the spring edition of the 2024 portal, and last year these were kind of uncharted territories, right? We were trying to figure out what would become the norm, what positions would be highly coveted, one ed there.
I like it.
And this year with another season on deck, I want to look at some of those positions that we feel like, okay, after a couple of years of data, this is what we feel like we're gleaning, but also looking at what your biggest worry as a fan is during the portal window, because as we know, the portal giveth, the portal taketh. Before we get into all of that, of course, a shout out to our friends at homefieldapparel.com. They just celebrated their March Sadness sale. I believe it was 30% off. So I hope you got in on the action there. Regardless of if they're running a special or not, though, you can get 15% off your entire order by using code 3TechPod. For your first time purchase. Return customers use the link in our link tree that's in our bio, Instagram, Twitter, and you can continue to enjoy those great savings as well. And Trey's not here to read the baller line, but Baller Pickleball, it is the season of spring, and you can get 10% off Baller Pickleball paddles and equipment by using our code 3TechPod as well. I think Trey is actually out of the house enjoying a little pickleball right now, sporting the Baller Pickleball paddle, and I believe he's got a hat as well. So join Trey, get some great gear, and go outside where you should be anyway, getting some exercise. If you're not though, if you're inside watching YouTube or you're listening to a podcast at your desk, we're glad to have you. Always great to remind you to join the show full time if you have not subscribed on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you get your college football content. We're there doing daily content, so we would love to have you join the Jimmies and the Joes. Here, first up, you look at some rosters that are losing at least some high-level projectable talent. A lot of these might be younger guys, but Colorado, Texas, USC, even Tennessee, I saw right before we hit record, lost a starting linebacker. blue chip programs losing, well, I don't know about Colorado, but some blue chip programs and Dion are losing a whole lot of players here on this first day of the spring portal. And that's not to be unexpected, right? Especially,
Right.
in a conference like the SEC where you've got teams that still have holes after or during spring ball, uh, but they can't poach from each other, right? There's that rule you cannot transfer within the conference and be eligible to play once we get to the spring window. So this makes for a lot of seemingly bizarre connections. And remember, Garrett, Texas, Oklahoma in the SEC this year. So those guys from the Lone Star State that are transferring out of those schools, they can't stay home to play at Texas A&M. They can't go east to play in the Southeastern Conference. They've got to go elsewhere. As you look around the landscape, what's kind of stuck out to you from these first few hours?
Man, well, the thing that I think has been the most jarring, and first off, I do want to warn you, Mitch, with the Colorado slander, okay? They have a very passionate fan base who will not take too kindly to you saying anything negative about them, and they'll start to question your motives. And I don't.
Oh, they're not a blue blood program.
They
Not today.
not a blue blood. I agree with that. But I think that we have to, at least couch it with that and say like, hey, Colorado fans, like I want to make sure we put like the sensitivity warning on it. Okay, we're not trying to hurt your feelings. Okay, we're just saying something that's not immaculately positive about your school at the moment. But from the window, from the first, little thing here in the window, the thing that's been sticking out to me the most is just how susceptible the stars are. It seemed like in the past, like you can kind of keep your star happy. It seems like most of the schools have been dishing out the NIL to make that happen. But it's starting to look like, hey man, like there's like with Tennessee, we just got the news that their linebacker Elijah Herring, he's planning to enter the portal. He led the team with 79 tackles last season. That's your star linebacker. That's your ready to go rock and roll linebacker right there. And when he's, not coming back, that starts to tell me like, hey, some of these NIL collectives, some of these, coaching situations, some of the hype around the new coaches, and, maybe go back a couple years to teams that were, really, really exciting to play for. You can't keep your best guys either because, it's just the day and age that we live in, right? An old recruiting coordinator for some school moves to another school and he's still got contacts, right? The Rolodex is still full. He's still reaching out to the guys he used to. And so, man, it's kind of crazy to look at some of these, early reports, at least, that some of these star players could be leaving. And obviously, even last week when we found out with Damian Martinez, him leaving, and then for a cup of coffee, Bear Alexander was in the portal, and then decided to go back to USC.
Got cleared.
Yeah, it's. I mean, look, it is what it is. But yeah, it's just the day that we live in right now. It's the day and age we live in. We're currently living through an interesting time where there's a little bit of an evolution of the portal where, like, yeah, now your top players aren't even safe because if they're not the happiest in their role, if they don't see how this turns them into a first round pick, then they could be out the door for a different opportunity.
It's very true. It's very true. I mean, gosh, no one is seemingly willing to wait anymore to
Sure.
learn and develop, right? Like that's what made some of these Alabama teams under Nick Saban so great is every single year it felt like they had, a fourth year junior or a senior laden class, but they were guys that just stuck it out. And the 4 and 5 stars just kept reloading. Saban had the recruiting covered on the front end, but ultimately guys wanted to be made better. They wanted to sit and develop and learn from the greatest coaching staff ever known to college football. And not only were they able to win national championships, but then they were also able to develop into first rounders. It is insane, seemingly, how many blue chip recruits transfer and hop around. I mean, gosh, JT Daniels, right, was supposed to be
Yeah.
the next big gunslinger for USC. He transfers to 4 schools over the course of his career and obviously has to retire due to medical reasons, but
Right.
he wasn't going pro. No one was going to consider him an NFL quarterback. And so you truly are seeing, I think, the grass is greener mentality, even though these teams have these motivational speakers that come in and tell them to buy in, and everyone preaches culture and everybody preaches togetherness. Nobody's together. Everyone's just looking out for their own pocketbook. And I'm not saying that that shouldn't be allowed. That is totally their decision. I support their right to go make as much money as they want to in the
Right.
NIL space, right? Like I have no issue with that. I worked as a facilitator of the NIL space when it first came out. But ultimately, I think you're seeing a lot of kids take money in the present who also have the talent and the pro aspirations to be someone great at the NFL level. But I think you're seeing a lot of athletes realize that sometimes those future aspirations may be sacrificed if you hop around. You don't get continuity. You're not guaranteed a starting spot. I mean, gosh, how many guys are re entering the portal today that were either grad transfers or had transferred to
Yep.
Colorado, for instance? Number of guys who had transferred over to Colorado thought they were going to have a starting spot, thought they were going to be the next big thing in the lights of prime time, and now they're on their way out towards the East Coast or wherever home is for them with
Yep.
1 year of eligibility, right? Like it is definitely a two-edged sword.
Well, and case in point, if you want an exact perfect example of why you should stick around and develop, you can look at Marvin Harrison Jr. because he sat there at Ohio State and was not the first option for a couple of years. He sat behind Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and he sat behind those dudes knowing that, hey, those guys are further along in their development, further along in their careers, and they right now are better receivers than I am, but I could be that guy. And we saw him, in I think it was the Rose Bowl, was,
Yeah.
kind of his big breakout party.
Yep.
And that wasn't even his first big full season. I just remember watching that going, oh, hey, Marvin Harrison's kid's pretty good. And, thinking about that. But it's just kind of crazy to look at that and think like, he is who he is right now. How could you possibly bench this guy? How is he not your number one on day one? Well, how is he not your number one? It's because he needed to develop a little bit. And when you're a school like Ohio State, yeah, you're going to bring in some top end receivers. But like, I think we're all expecting Marvin Harrison Jr. to go be a better pro than either Wilson or Olave. But that's just what development does for a player. And fortunately, he had some, good, voices in his ear saying, hey, like you need to stick it out because they have a great receivers coach there in Heartline and he can develop you and make you into something. Right. And so I know that's not the case at every school. Obviously, not every single school is going to be the best for your development, but especially at some of these top end programs, just sit and develop and get in the weight room and get practice time and get consistency. And then let's see what kind of a pro you can turn into later. Even if right now it's not the perfect situation, you're not getting all the playing time, you're not the star as a freshman, right? Like wait it out, see what you can do, and then maybe make the team, captain spot as like a sophomore or junior. And then you can keep going from there. Don't worry about trying to be the star on day one.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to know from the Jimmies and the Joes two things, and feel free to write in Twitter, Instagram at 3TechPod, the YouTube comments as well. Would love to know two things. First of all, do you see the transfer portal as a net positive or a net negative in its current state? So right now, spring window 2024, is it a net positive? Is it a net negative? The second question that I want to move into now, Garrett, what is your biggest worry as a fan every time the spring window rolls around, right? The spring window is very unique because in the fall, you've obviously got your recruiting class set. You can offset some of those losses with the high school recruits, with junior college guys or FCS guys. There's chances to be more flexible, right? In the spring window, you can be left high and dry very easily at the snap of a hat. And in case in point, Louisville is losing reportedly 4 to 5 offensive linemen, right? Pitt
Brutal.
is losing Devin Hayes, their best edge rusher, out of nowhere. You can be left with these gaping holes on your roster that then your staff is truly having to spin its wheels, maybe just to hit the scholarship limit. Make sure that you've got enough talented bodies out there to fill out that 85-man limit. I want to hear from you and the Jimmies and the Joes. Garrett, as a fan yourself, when you look at both your team and across the landscape, what comes to mind? What kind of keeps you awake at night, gives you the cold shivers when you think about the spring portal window?
Well, honestly, at this point, I was gonna say going into the show, well, I'm not really worried about the stars, right? Because they're gonna be in place. But now we're even looking at the stars having to be the guys that are being replaced at some point. So really, at this point, I think the thing that has to kind of keep you up and keep you nervous is the fact that your staff, whoever your football staff is, recruiting staff, player retention, whatever you want to put a tag on it, those guys have to be almost more aggressive during the spring, right? Because number one, you got to retain the guys that are on your roster, right? There might be guys who are in the competition phase. Maybe they haven't learned the system quite yet, but you know that they can get there. And so you have to make sure that you can continue to pitch them the vision, even in the middle of some tough practices and maybe some non-ideal circumstances transitioning. But you also have to be, actively looking out there and keeping up with your big board, so to speak, to say like, hey, I'm kind of suspicious that this linebacker is going to transfer out or this corner isn't happy. And I got to make sure that I've got a guy on the other end that I can go in and get, right? I have to make sure that I can go get that guy to fill the need, or that I have like a list of guys that I could maybe reach out to if they're unhappy, and make sure that your player personnel people are on top of it. Because like you're saying, you can get left high and dry very quickly with no real options, right? Because if you leave the spring transfer window without what you need, you might be just looking at, hey, let's put up the posters for, tryouts and stuff because we need another linebacker just for depth purposes or something like that. And you don't want to be in that situation, especially if you're a top end program competing. The other really big thing here is just making sure, I think in this new, this newest version of the portal, it really just is coming to a point where, and we've said this for a couple of years now, donors are going to quit shelling out the cash for stuff, right? At some point in time, 7-5, 8-4 ain't going to get you $10 million in NIL funds, right? That's not going to get you what it did at the very beginning because, the donors are going to be a little bit fed up with this, right? And so they're going to say like, hey, what am I actually getting for my money? And, I think that we're at that point now where we're starting to see that a little bit where, and again, I think this is where some of the stars leaving plays in. Why would you dish out, for example, if you're Penn State and, you're wide receiver one walking out the door, some of the Penn State, guys are sitting there like, hey, like we keep putting in a bunch of money into this program and we can't even win a bowl game. We can't get on top and actually finish the season strong. We feel like we should be at this level in the Big Ten. We're constantly underachieving. They're not a bad program by any means. Like, and I'm using Penn State for a reason. Penn State's a good program with a good football team and you can succeed there. But even at Penn State, you have to wonder if there's some behind the scenes stuff going on where like the donors aren't happy and they're not able to keep getting the guys that they're getting. And so I think, it's an unfortunate thing. It's an unfortunate thing that we're here. I think to the first question, do you think what it is in its current iteration is good? I would say no, because it needs to find its balance, right? It needs to be able to find the balance where, you can keep up with the rest of the schools. There's a somewhat competitive playing field when it comes to the portal, when it comes to NIL. As it is right now, it's just not there.
Yeah, I think my biggest worry, and I saw this play out on Twitter earlier today. I was really curious to read some of the comments and kind of get the pulse of the fan base of Arkansas, who has lost all of their scholarship quarterback options except for new transfer Talon Green. He came in from Boise State. This feels very similar to the Baylor situation from a couple of years ago, where after spring ball, Dave Aranda told Gary Buchanan, hey, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to go with Blake Shapen. We want to give you a chance to go find a new home. He transferred to South Florida. Shapen was not the guy that led them down the stretch, led them to a Big 12 championship game. He struggled mightily. He's since transferred out of the program, right? So Arkansas seemingly is going all in on Talon Green, who, yes, was very talented at Boise State, showed flashes, had a very good spring game, but now you've had KJ Jefferson transfer to UCF, and you just had Jacoby Criswell, who transferred from North Carolina. He's re-hit the portal looking for a starting opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah.
Arkansas is not going to be a good football team, at least the way I look at them on paper right now. And now you add to that, you are going all in on one quarterback who has not done anything more than taken a couple of introductory level spring semester courses there. That to me is my biggest worry, losing your X factor and pinning your hopes on the new shiny toy, especially at quarterback. That really worries me. And I think Arkansas fans should be at least nervous heading into the summer and fall off-season workouts.
Look, it's a gamble, and I think the hard thing is it's showing that some of these coaches are going to have to get a little desperate, and they're going to have to say, look, this is my guy, and in order to keep him, I'm going to have to sell out a little bit to show that I want him. but that is going to mean that you're going to lose some people, right? Like if you're not, taking a long, drawn out, purposefully dramatic quarterback battle into the last week of fall camp, you might lose all your quarterbacks except for the one who's obviously the first teamer, right? Like that's the sad kind of part about it. And that's a sucky part about being a coach right now. But I think you're right. Like if it pays off, like if Taylor Green's a great quarterback, he can bring Arkansas up and they can win some games next year. But if he's below average, if he gets hurt, like if I'm not rooting for that, obviously, but anything can happen. It's the SEC. You play a tough schedule, and you get rolled over the wrong way on a rollout or something like that. Then you can very quickly turn a season, from being kind of optimistic and hey, that Taylor Green kid, he's really got something, into well, who's the backup? And wait, he's a walk on. Wait, where did he play? Wait, he's a freshman walk on? Wait, what high school did he go to? Right? You start to kind of do that number. And that's definitely not where you want to be as a Power 5 or I guess Power 4 program now. And yeah, I mean, it's if it works out, good for Arkansas, right? I don't know that this is necessarily what they're trying to do, but that is kind of where they've ended up. And again, they've run off some people who just weren't the guy, right? KJ Jefferson wasn't going to be the guy. They've figured that out over the last couple of years. And for the Baylor example, Shapen wasn't it. Like it didn't work, and maybe they should have gone with Bohannon, but they didn't. And now they've had to hit the portal on the other side of it, and I think they got a good one in DeQuan Finn. But to Arkansas, are we saying now that this is their version of DeQuan Finn, where they've officially hit the portal and fixed the problem, or is this going to be the commit to Shapen, and then we got to wait till the next quarterback? But it means similar to Baylor, a couple of years in the wilderness.
Well, they are spending more than a couple of years in the wilderness. If anyone can bring them back though and make that offense fun again, it is DeQuan Finn.
I'm excited about DeQuan Finn.
Yeah, if you missed the breakdown on the channel of DeQuan Finn at Baylor, go back a couple episodes. You can find a short and a YouTube video specifically about the Toledo product going down to Waco. As we wrap this up, last big question I have here: premium positions. Which ones do you think are the most important to stock up on through the portal, knowing that you have both injury and other teams looking to pilfer that talent away? In fact, I was told a couple of days ago, I guess, by a source that there's a Big 12 school that had a preemptive meeting, and I'm sure this is not unique to that school. That's why I'm not going to name them,
Right.
but had a meeting specifically gearing up for the last push to convince kids, hey, come to our school. Once the portal opens, come to our school. So quite literally a meeting on at the very least on the bleeding edge of tampering, in preparation to just try and either take advantage of it or quite frankly survive. So when there are those positions that stack up on your big board of, hey, we need to go get these guys and stock up on these positions, which ones do you start with?
Well, look, I mean, first off, point of contact is going to be where the most injury is. So you need guys on both lines of scrimmage because, the amount of times one of the big uglies up front gets rolled over or something like that, it's just too much, right? It just happens too frequently. And so you're going to need your guys on your offensive line. You're going to need your guys on your defensive line. But more than that, you're going to need edge guys specifically. When I look at this, I say, what's getting paid for in the NFL? Because football's football. And if it's in the NFL versus, the college level, those are still the important positions. So who's going to be rushing off the edge and who's going to be that, stud left tackle for you that you can set on the edge and keep the edge pressure off, right? Those are kind of the two big ones that you're wanting to look for the kind of star talent. Maybe go down a level to the guy who is the G5 star or something like that. You can go, snag him or something. But I think also another big one is anything in the secondary, because it seems like those guys in the secondary are so just like hit or miss with systems, right? You can get a great guy, then he moves to another school and doesn't quite work out and the coverage doesn't work and he doesn't play off of the other guys as well. But it just seems like, man, if you can find the right mix of corners and safeties, you're going to be great on the back end, no problems. And so you need a lot of those guys, I think, to push each other, to really push competition, but also just so you can kind of mix and match. And any random day in practice, you can run different, guys at the ones, different guys with the twos, and find the group that works the best for you. And obviously, some guys are going to be more talented. I'm not saying, there's this 5-star kid, he's not going to amount to anything. Look for that, 3-star guy. He's a better fit with the system or something. I'm not saying that, but obviously you're going to need a bunch of those guys, if for nothing else than just the fact that, again, like it's a lot of guys in the back end. Some of them are going to need breathers, right? And in a long season, in a long game, and these high tempo offenses, especially, you're going to need guys who can roll in and off the field, real quick. They can say like, "Hey, I got the next 3" or something like that, because you're heaving out there. So it's another position where you can never have too many corners, right? That you can't find yourself enough corners. Too often teams are, it seems like too often, at least, you see teams going down to the like, hey, this is our, 6th-string corner. He's a walk-on. He's this guy, and he's playing substantial minutes because that guy hurt his ankle and that guy's out of breath. So this guy's doing his thing now.
I think wide receiver is a position that I'm so
Sure.
curious to watch. You mentioned the injuries with the offensive and defensive line. You start to see a lot of injuries for wide receivers come spring ball and into fall camp as well. Penn State losing Keandre Lambert Smith, who
Yep.
I think was, going to be weapon number 1 for Drew Aller up at Penn State. I'm going to do a video here on the channel about Penn State, kind of where the Nittany Lions are in the new look Big Ten. They've really been kind of position C behind Michigan and Ohio State for the last several years, but man, it feels like their stock might be falling. Maybe they missed their championship window. So stay tuned for that. I'll have that up on the channel very, very soon. But losing a guy like Lambert Smith, that hurts. And now another program is going to go be able to potentially get a wide receiver 2, depending on how you want to use him. Maybe he's a wide receiver 1 if he goes to a school that's a little bit less established at the position, but always being open to adding that X factor playmaker, especially heading into the fall campaign. I think it's a big advantage if you can manage to land one of those fish. Sneaky position group that I think far too many people forget about when it comes to recruiting in the portal is that linebacker. Now, I know that you have fewer and fewer linebackers on the field. And, certainly when you think of a traditional linebacker who's split in the A gap and just there for run defense, that's largely gone from the game now with so many nickel and dime defenses on the field. You really need a guy who can stuff the run and drop back into coverage. But having at least 2 every down linebackers who you can roll out there and rely on in both a passing situation, cover a tight end, cover a guy coming underneath, or step up and stop the run. That is vital, especially when you talk about the championship caliber football, the Georgias, the Michigans, the Alabamas. They all get elite linebacker play on an every down basis. You can't just mail in that position and kind of go with, 2 guys that, well, they're a little too big to play safety and, too small to play edge rusher. You've got to have a dedicated linebacker core ready to go. And I think too often when you look down the portal tracker, I think those linebackers maybe get overlooked.
Yeah, well, and the big thing with linebackers too is I don't know that there's a more important position on the field where you need that versatility and that overall athleticism, right? Because you're totally right. You got to be able to drop into coverage in today's game and be able to get out and get on a tight end real quick, or stuff a slot or something like that. But also, I mean, run stop's a big deal. How about rushing the passer as well in some of those blitz packages, being able to be a guy who can actually get after the passer, beat an offensive lineman, have a couple pass rush moves, and see if you can actually make something happen. There's just so many things that we're asking linebackers to do now, which makes them so much more valuable, right? Like I have no idea where Tennessee's guy is going, but wherever he ends up, he's going to be a stud, and he's probably going to cement himself a nice little NIL deal as well. Because look, if you can get those guys on your roster, that's what you're looking for, right? You need a guy who can jump up, be a tackling machine all over the field. You have that, it opens up your defense. I totally agree. You got to look out for linebackers on this list as well.
Well, let us know right in what position of need you're looking forward to hopefully adding to in this window. and bolstering over the off season, and let us know what your top concern is heading into each portal window. What is your specific team maybe about to be victimized by? We'd love to know. Instagram, Twitter, YouTube comments at 3TechPod. We'd love to hear from you and have you join the Jimmies and the Joes as well. For Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until next time, so long, everybody.
Gracious, how about